Hello, you're listening to Talking Utter Slot. Rather than the usual programme where we look at what's happened in the past week, this one takes a slightly longer timescale, 20 years in fact, because September 2023 was the 20th anniversary of when Slot Forum got started. I was involved as a moderator, not quite from day one, from day 2 or 3 I think, but I thought it was a good excuse to gather together the people who had started the forum and talk about why and some of the fun we had 20 years ago when the internet was young and we didn't have grey beards. Hope you enjoy it. You are listening to Talking Utter Slot. This is a bit different, this one though, not least because there's 4 of us in this conversation, so it's a bit of a first, and we're having a bit of a reunion, sort of. We're all in vaguely different countries. There's 2 of us in England, 1 in France and 1 in Switzerland. And the reason for that is it's 20 years since Slot Forum was started, this month, September. So I thought, noticing that, it might be quite good to get together some of the gang and see if we can remember why we did it, what it was like, and some of the more allowable gossip that we can now share, shall we go? So I shall I shall go quickly through introductions to say there's Gareth, Alan, and Doug. And I'm going to start off, I'm going to try and steer it with some questions, really. And what I want to try and do is to say, why did we start it? And how did we start it? And that's really going to be Doug and Alan, because I think from a technical point of view, you guys got it going. But if I can set the background, I think we were all, so forums were relative, or fora, as I should say, being a good Latin student. They were relatively new. And I think we all were involved in the American one, Slotcar Illustrated. It certainly was a big part of introducing me to other people locally. And then there came a sort of fateful moment when we decided we were going to have our own one. So, Doug and Alan, who wants to kick off on how that started? I mean, I think it's fair to say that our Slotcar Illustrated was great. It was very American, and we're not. So we probably wanted something a little bit more European. Would that be? It doesn't work if you don't talk, Alan.
Well, it was Alan's idea originally, so he can tell us why we started it. I did the technical aspect of it, but Alan, why did we start it originally?
I think we just wanted something more European based. So for me, whenever I get into a hobby, I like to give back. I don't like to just take. So the idea being, okay, so we're all going on Slotcar Illustrated, but hey, it's an American forum, so it's quiet when we're awake. And then we get a load of English and European chat coming on, and then the Americans come on and don't know what we're talking about. So we just decided, why don't we try something for ourselves? And Doug was always the tech guy, so he said, yeah, well, I can get a forum going. And it kind of went from there.
I'd been involved with the Corvette Club forum that used the same software. And after chatting to Alan, I mean, I said we could get one going in 10 minutes or so. And I think it took us 24 hours in those days because the domain name had to propagate and everything like this. But literally 24 hours after that conversation we had a forum up and running. And I think for the first year, it sat in my garage on a PC. And then I remember every now and then it would go out. There was like this downtime, and people would scream and shout, and oh my God, the forum was down for half an hour or something. But and then we moved it to London, and then it went to Paris, and it went kind of all around the world in terms of hosting. But yeah, no, it was hosted in the garage for a while.
How did Doug and Alan, how did you know each other?
From the website, from Slotcar Illustrated.
Okay, so that's how you met online as well.
I think for the initial few, sorry, Doug, I think for the initial few, it was all of us came from Slotcar Illustrated, but it was like, okay, so I know he's in the UK, and Doug, okay, I know you're in France, you're not far from me, really, and then we went from there.
Got you.
So when you say you set it up in 24 hours, I mean, I can, that takes me that long to do the laundry, frankly. But how was it literally that easy? I mean, why was it so easy to do and sort of create that so quickly? Was it just at the right time, or what? You had a computer with?
I had an internet company at the time, and our business was setting up websites and selling domain names. We were the biggest domain name and website hosting company in France. And I mean, setting up a website was just like a matter of sort of telling the tech guys, set it up, and voila, it was done. We came up with a name. I think we brainstormed for 5 minutes on names. It really didn't take long. I mean, it was like, let's create a slot forum. Okay, what's it called? Let's try slotforum.com, and voila, slotforum.com was available. So it wasn't difficult in those days. And technically, look, it was just what you do. You set up a website and you just install forum software. It was just that was it.
And then, so once you'd built the house, as it were, you had to then invite some people to come and play.
We invited you. I mean, you came.
Yeah, sorry. An early mistake, I know.
I think that was Alan's job as well. I mean, Alan said, "Okay, fine, I'm going to go and get the first bunch of characters."
Yeah. So there was a core. There was a core. So actually, Wankel. So Peter, yourself, Jim. Who else was there initially? The idea was to get a core of the more vocal English initially.
Right.
And they all came from Slotcar Illustrated. We just private messaged and said, hey, we're doing this. It's a bit more English-centric. Are you interested?
Well, it was, I think, looking back, because I only recently, I didn't say rejoined, I never left Slot Forum, but I sort of stopped doing slot cars for a while and all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Jim is still a moderator, and I couldn't remember my password. I mean, that's like 4 computers ago, and I just couldn't get in. And he was able to get into my original account and kind of rejoin me back to that, which is why I know that my join date was the 18th of September. And I seem to remember the initial setting up of it was something like the 12th, wasn't it? So literally from nothing to having some folk on it, certainly how quickly we all got contacted and joined. So the notion was to get some what should we say, talkative Brits involved in the whole thing.
Gobby Brits.
Gobby Brits, that's the word. Yeah, that's the.
With large wallets, so they had stuff to talk about. So.
Yeah. Well, that. But it was a kind of great time because you had, Fly was not that new, was it? It was probably 5 or 6 years old, and the contrasting it to, there were relatively fewer slot car makers, but they were making a lot more models, and there was a lot more people involved in buying and playing with them.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the sad things today, was you sort of see a big run from Scalextric says 1,500 models or something, whereas back, I think I was talking to Steve, who was AEC, who's now Staff Slots UK. So he used to import SCX. He said when he was doing, I think I'll get this story wrong. Always refer to the title, Talking Utter Slot. So the threshold of accuracy is fairly low. But anyway, the gist of the story was to order the cars, and I think it was Mark II Escort. He had to make a decision to order something like 5,000, and they sold out in 12 days, or there's certainly a handful of days. Whereas now, when he's getting something from a much more, he probably really only wants a couple of hundred, but he has to take 300 in order to get them to make the model. So again, the reason for telling that now is that the number of people who were buying, playing, and therefore probably interested in a slot forum was much bigger back then. And probably can we remember how quickly it grew? Can we remember how did it get going? So we've got that thing. What do we do next?
So the big game changer was Fly, because the detail was incredible for the time. I mean, at the time, Scalextric, the Horby's version of the Scalextric catalogue was like 6 pages. That was it. It had shrunk from the previous explosion of the hobby in the 60s, 70s. It had shrunk. So it was still going, but shrunk. But Fly came out with incredibly detailed models. So like the Lister, for example, was one of the first I remember. The other innovation was that he added magnets. But he added neodyne. I forget the word, but
very strong.
Very strong. Yes. Rather than the rubbishy square rubber magnets that Scalextric were using, it didn't work. These things actually stayed on the track fast.
Well, I remember being one of my first. I think it was my first visit when I discovered Palau shop in Barcelona.
Yep.
I was on a work trip, and so the bus went past this place. I went back and went in. So Aladdin's Cave, all this stuff that I just didn't know existed before. And they had the Venturi had just been launched, which had an even stronger magnet than the Viper. So it was the second car thing. So they had track screwed to the underside of a shelf, just a little oval, and a Venturi driving round upside down because the magnet was so strong that it could hold. Which at the time we thought, wow, this is just brilliant. Now the first thing I do is rip the bloody magnets out. So, but at the time it was amazing.
At the time, it was good. Do you want to know a secret about that little advert recording? They had 3 magnets on the car. Because they actually, it was strong, but it wasn't that strong. So they thought, well, you know what, no one's going to actually do it. So yeah, I heard from somebody a few years later that they put 3 magnets in the car.
Illusion shattered.
Yeah, it's ruined it for everybody now.
Now, so I go back to the forum. Obviously, it grew quite quickly. I mean, the number of people and the conversations and all that sort of thing. And I think I was a moderator from the beginning, and I don't remember.
We had 16 moderators from when you were invited. We literally the first 16 blokes we invited, we made them all mods, and like this, it just solved the problem of everything because whenever somebody came in, there was this gang of mods, and they didn't dare do anything bad for years. So.
For years,
I think the best the forum kind of statistics was 1 moderator for every 1,000 members, and we had 16 moderators right from the get go, and that just prevented any issues at all. You know.
Yeah.
Hang on. Just stop you there. It prevented any issues at all.
Just because we stamped on them before we.
I've taken my glasses off, Doug. Are you still wearing your rose tinted one?
But then we must have had I think looking at the stats, I think we had about 200 members by the end of September. So literally it went from 16 to 200, and those were all the people sort of that were our friends. We invited everyone we knew, and then it sort of grew organically from there. You know, people just realized. I think didn't I send you a picture the other day of when Google first came to the website? I think we had a
month later, yeah.
That was, to put that in context, I mean, how old was Google at that point? Probably not very.
Well, Google turned 25 today, so you know that's just it was 5 years old. So
yeah, seems strange. So yeah, so you would know. I mean, that was quite a thing. Google coming to skim a website.
We took a photograph. We took a picture saying, "Wow, Google's here."
If I'm remembering correctly, was that because you could see who was online, when all the names would appear in the thing, and it came up as Google Bot or something? Is that right?
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I've got a picture somewhere. I'll find it.
Okay. Fascinating. So we've touched on the need for moderation, and I think the clubs opened pages and people talked about new cars and all that sort of thing. I guess the thing we remember is, and the thing I remember was there was a kind of community within a community, which probably doesn't sound very nice, but because there was those mods and we all could chat to each other separately, there was a kind of sense of a club there. And I'd not recently joined a real club, and it was we are now talking 20 years later, and we all met up. We'll come to the meeting up later on, but there were some issues. I mean, people online behave badly. I mean, it's a kind of every day, every minute occurrence now. Back then, people were probably behaving a little bit better, and the idea of having the keyboard warrior was relatively new, wasn't it? I mean,
it was. So in the first few months, some of the worst problems we had were actually members coming across from the other forums. What are you doing? Why do you not come to our forum anymore? So there was a few issues like that, but because we had the number of mods and we had a chat every week initially, it was a case of, right, look, this is what we're not putting up with. We don't need this. So they gone instantly, and all the mods knew this, and you didn't have to ask permission. And so we were quite strict, and it wasn't as bad then. There were people throwing little paddies and expectations way above their standing. So
Yeah, I mean, I see, compared to, say, Twitter now, which is a nightmare, and you
I
get.
just left. Yeah.
But well, I still call it Twitter. I shouldn't really.
You were saying, Scott, about clubs within clubs. It was all the sub forums, and I can't remember when I joined, but it was later than obviously than you guys. I can't remember when it was. I think you, Scott, you put me onto it, and again probably after a rally or something like that. But all the clubs started having their own sub forums, and then to have a sub forum, correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember you had to have a moderator for that sub forum. So Farnham Scalextric Club had their own little bit, and that was fine. And the problem was I think I was moderating that, which was dead easy because there was no Facebook, there was no WhatsApp, there was no this, that. So this was the way that we messaged each other, apart from a carrier pigeon or a text message kind of thing. And then I think people forgot that they were actually still on a public forum. And I think that was so you'd be chatting away or talking to each other, spouting a load of bullshit, and then somebody random would look at it and say, "Oh God, did you see what they said about such and such yesterday?" Forgetting that actually, well, anybody can look at this. It was like, "Oh shit, we better moderate that." Okay, fine. And I think that's the time that I sort of realised.
This is awful. It's a good point, though, is it? Because it is not quite, very pre-Facebook in the real sense, and the social media as we know it now.
Yeah.
Certainly whichever of the forums that I getting to know, that going to a club which was only 20 miles away, I wouldn't have known it existed without the forum. Meeting various people, and even today, I still the same thing. I get to know people who are not that far away from me that you would just never discover otherwise. So it's good from that point of view. So that question was, manufacturers, when they sort of slot, so the Scalextric or Fly or SCX, Carrera, I guess that was kind of it, really, wasn't it? I don't think there was many. There wasn't any.
Yeah.
Ninko. How could I forget Ninko?
I had one Ninko car and I gave it away.
You fool! I just bought 4 of them last week. They're so cheap on eBay at the minute. It's crazy. I shouldn't talk about it because people will go out and buy them. I got 2 Ninko rally sets, so 4 cars for less than the price of 2 cars.
Yeah, look, please don't start telling me how cheap Ninko are getting.
That retirement stockpile, Alan, is perhaps not worth as much as you thought it was.
Yeah, it's not going to be.
They're all going to end up homeless, aren't they?
It's definitely not worth selling, honestly. Just I'll take them home for you, but they're not worth it. Well, I guess from when did you first get approached by, or did you approach the manufacturers? How did that work? When did?
The thing was, we were quite innovative in that. Again, I wanted to give back, and so you're looking at other forums. There were a couple of smaller ones around. I just thought it's the same with the clubs. Hey, why don't we get the clubs involved? So all these people joining, a lot of them are talking about they go here of an evening and there of an evening. So we approached them and said, hey, we'll give you your own sub-forum, as Gareth said, if you moderate it. And then it was, look, why don't we just go to all the manufacturers and say you can have your own page? We started with Maurizio Ferrari, mostly because I found that being in Switzerland, I'm in the middle of France, Germany, Italy, whatever, and they were easy to get to. Spain was a little bit harder, but we managed it. So we just invited all of them. We found that the ones we could find someone in charge of their marketing, especially their online marketing. And it's the same thing. We'll give you your own page. And we tried saying you can moderate it, but that was too much work for them. So then we started finding moderators who were interested in a brand. So you moderate this channel. They will feed you all the information. So we had early releases. We had press releases. And then Doug had the excellent idea of going to Nuremberg for the toy fair. So the first year the 2 of us went, and that went on for a few years. That was amazing. Because we had so many contacts.
That was fun, huh?
It was amazing,
So how did you? So you applied for what, press passes and?
Yeah, we got press passes, and we had to get there. I remember I flew in once. I took a train in once, and I went with Alan. We drove a couple of times in as well, 2 or 3 times. I mean, I think I went 5 times in all, something like this, 5 at least.
Yeah, I think at least twice you flew to me and then we drove, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
Well,
it was in February, right? So I mean, winter was tricky, and there'd be ice and snow on the roads and things, and it wasn't easy getting there.
Well, that was fun. But no,
To be
it's
fair
the
though,
big
when
ones
you
that.
started doing that, that was, I think that must have been one of the biggest draws. I mean, it was
Yeah.
always, I don't know, I mean, I never saw this, well, I probably did see the stats, but I certainly can't remember them. But surely the day you came back from Nuremberg and you started posting pictures of
Well,
news.
we do it from the shows, huh?
Yeah.
Remember, we actually did it from the.
That was the second year. The first year we did it on the way back, but and then
Yeah.
the
Did we?
next day.
Okay, yeah.
But
But
then yeah,
everybody was desperate to see stuff because I remember when I started doing it as well, because I did it a few years after you guys, primarily for the NSCC and then SOC Forum at the same time, and I'd do all those news posts. Again, I remember Doug sending you all those pictures, and they'd be hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures we'd be uploading and trying to get them to talk to you. It was just, anyway.
Yeah.
But the amount of hits was just huge because people had never really seen that up until then.
no, and the manufacturers too, because they were all saying, "Hey, look, here's a bunch of guys who are actually serious about giving something back." And so they all jumped. They were sending us emails. They were sending us stuff for testing, for which we actually sent out to a lot of other people, a lot of you guys at the time. So
yeah, I remember. I was good. Well, I mean, the context of the interest, I think certainly for us, for me in the UK, the only other news channel for slot cars was the NSCC monthly newsletter. Now, I don't know what the lead time on getting something in, but it was at least a month, maybe. So by the time something was announced, it probably took a few weeks to get into that mag that then got printed in Europe. So news from the toy fair could be months out of date, whereas now you were getting to see it instantly.
Well,
Which,
whatever they wanted you to photograph. Because there was
okay,
some stuff that we weren't allowed to. I don't know if you ever had that, Doug and Alan, but there was like, no, you can't take any pictures of that. And that was like,
Yeah,
you got it
occasionally.
on display.
But that was some sort of. I mean, never Hornby. Hornby was always just, it's here, take a photograph. I mean, it was often the sort of maybe the Spanish, I think.
SCX especially, I remember saying, no, you can't take a picture of that. You can't take a picture of that. It's like, well, why did you bring it if we can't take a photograph of
Yeah.
it? Surely that's the whole point.
SCX were never that engaged, funnily enough, out of all of them.
Yeah.
The second year when Doug came up with the idea of taking the stuff and doing reports there and uploading, then 3 or 4, maybe more of the manufacturers and the smaller guys, they were queuing up, sending us emails. Hey, when can we do this review with you and the interviews? And can I go before so and so? But we didn't really get this. Oh, you can't take a picture of that. It was,
Okay.
I think Fly a couple of times said, look, you can take pictures, but please don't publish them until the end of the show because we have other people who are coming along and they also want to. And then they tried to tie everyone into the same day at the same time, which didn't always work, but it was close enough.
well, I mean, there was an echo of that in my real life with real cars, in the sense that I remember the excitement of when we could go to a motor show, and I can't remember which one it was, but it was Geneva, and being able, because Twitter, you could actually say, "Here I am at motor show." Whereas at that point there was a shift from journalists would come see something, it would get printed days, weeks later, to they had websites, so things would get hosted on a website maybe the next day, because that still felt quick. And now you could go, well, before even Autocar have showed you this, here's a picture of it, click, and then we could do that. And there was for a few years, it was kind of live reporting from a press conference seemed interesting. And then we quickly learned, well, actually, it's a really difficult way to do it. And eventually, when I was running the social media department, well, not eventually, quite quickly, we stopped sending people to the show because we knew our own news. We would prepare everything before the show, and somebody at a desk back in England, because it was far better. It wasn't being done on the hoof. They weren't having to find a corner somewhere. So the evolution of that kind of show reporting, and Gareth, you must have seen some of that and the requirement you had to go. It was amazing, the need for Wi-Fi and all that sort of stuff. So it's always, I think it's important just to remember that even 20 years ago, doing stuff online was still relatively, that was relatively new, I think.
But
Not a lot of people.
we struggled to get the Wi-Fi passwords at the Nuremberg Toy Fair. We'd spent the first day running around like headless chicken looking for the Wi-Fi access, and they said, "Why do you need Wi-Fi? You know, we're journalists. Yeah, so why do you need Wi-Fi?" It was
Do you remember that guy who took our the cards we'd had printed, and he was like, "But these aren't accredited. If you were a real journalist, you'd know how to get Wi-Fi."
no, but I promise you, the first year they would give you Wi-Fi. I think it lasted 10 minutes or something, and we had to go
Yes.
back and get these things updated all the time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was fun.
Talking about business cards, Gareth, you earlier, you still got it to hand, do you?
Yeah, I have. So this is. I don't know what year this is from actually, but I'll hold it. I'll send it to you later. So I don't know if you can all see that. So
Yeah.
I had to get these printed because, a bit like you were saying, Alan, you'd go along to Nuremberg or to the London Toy Fair or whatever, and over the years it was easier to get in. You didn't have to have accreditation. You just needed to be savvy and apply in advance and that sort of stuff. So I think at the time it kind of shifted from the bit that you had where manufacturers are saying, yes, come and talk to me, we're really keen, la-di-da-di-da, to actually being inundated with lots of people saying, oh, hello, I'm Fred from Slot Forum, can I talk to you about this? And they didn't know who the hell you were. So I remember when I went, I had to get these business cards printed up. And it says here, reporter moderator, Jexy1, which was my name. Because otherwise they wouldn't talk to you because they'd say, no, well, somebody else has just already been to talk to us. Who is that?
Yeah, we had a problem with that.
Yeah.
So I think so that has a racer Ferrari on it, right? So that's at least 2006. And I think that we had to start telling people in advance who was going and what their names were. So we had to have the cards because we were getting people turning up saying, "Ich bin from Slot Forum." Well, you're German.
Yeah, the German Slot Forum.
Yeah.
There was one in Germany called Slot Forum, the German Slot Forum or something.
Yeah, we tried to link. That was Marcus. Yeah.
Yeah,
he tried to link. Do you remember? Yeah. He wanted to affiliate at one point.
Well, just staying with the manufacturers for a second though. So I know I certainly got some cars to review, which I still have. I have to say, and I think they came into you, Doug, didn't they? And then you would sort of dispense them through the moderators in various ways.
Some of them. I think Alan got a bunch sent to him via his connections. Like Slotted would send things to Alan, I think, but I got a bunch from Hornby. But
how did that start? Did you have to ask for that, or was that something they offered?
No one offers anything.
Yeah, no, we had to ask. But so I was a distributor in Switzerland for Slotted for a little while. So that started off there, and then I used to go across to see them for lunch, and at the same time, that's how I got to know the guys at Racer and Osterero. And then we branched into some of the more niche handmade stuff, which then led on to probably one of the most argumentative forum ideas ever when we decided to have a whole forum area for slot car building. The arguments over that's not kit bashing, that's not slot. Oh my god, it just got ridiculous. It's like, but that's not building a slot car. You're just putting decals on it. It was just, especially when Gareth started coming out with white cars.
But the thing is that
remember that.
Yeah, that's the thing is when you do that, you tap into. I was talking to Scott about this on some other bits that we were talking about, and you go from people thinking they're on their own in their sheds, in their studies, in their model making rooms, building this stuff, all very singular and on their own, and maybe once in a blue moon they meet up with somebody who also does the same thing, but then suddenly you're all together, and because they're so passionate about it, like you say, they're saying, "Oh, that's not real. That's not right. This isn't." That I think that's when it gets passionate, and you get lots of people that are passionate. Invariably, you're going to get a few banging of heads. I think is probably the safest way to say it.
Yeah, over definitions more than anything.
Yeah, and it all gets a bit anal. Probably.
No, that's a very polite way of putting it.
That's right.
I think Scott's going to edit that out.
Yeah, we should just emphasise he means people are worried about the small details rather.
Is that what I meant?
rather than any other usage of that word. Uh,
That's a different website, Scott. Very different.
different time,
I think
very
that's
different
German.
time.
Isn't that a German website?
Yeah, probably. Don't go there. Don't go there.
But I'll tell you something. The slotcar forum wasn't as bad as train forums.
Ooh.
Because the train guys are worse. And I'll tell you something now. That the only forums I belong to now are sailing forums, and they are even worse because I think it's all to do with the average age of the average member. And sailing forums now, maybe like any forum, I suppose, the average age is about 70, right? And guys, when they get old, tend to get grumpy, grouchy, crotchety.
I have no idea what you're
Desperately
talking
being
about.
polite.
Speaking as probably the oldest man in the room, I'd like to defend the old from being accused of being grumpy. But in terms, I mean, here comes a delicate. We're going to be delicate now. So obviously, there was times when we had to deal with some problems, and I'm not sure legally which ones we can talk about. So I'll rely on this. We can protect each other.
I've written down the names that we're not allowed to say, or the one name, just so I don't say it again, because whoever it is, they'll know who they are, and we're not allowed to talk about it, I don't think.
I sent you the photograph. It's on the WhatsApp.
Yeah,
group
I'll have a
chat.
look at that in a bit. I never saw a photograph of him, but we all know who we're talking about.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point. Was it because we all got to know each other? At first, everybody had a made-up name. I think I was a Kuriakos or something, and God knows why I didn't use your name. Anyway, so you would then go to an event, a swap meet or something, and you've no idea who the person you were talking to. You might have been chatting to them only last night on some, and that persists today. I mean, it's lovely, but I was earlier this year, I was at a swap meet and standing having a rummage, and somebody came up and said, "Are you Scott?" And I went, "Yes." And that kind of guilty, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm listening to the podcast." But you had no idea who you're engaging with. But no, I said that. So if we don't use names of the problem, I think there was some light-hearted problems, if you like, but there was also some serious ones, and I not to kill the mood.
I can't remember anything serious.
Well, the one wouldn't take much nudging.
The one I'll sort of, I think, because obviously, I remember one where there was someone who was seemingly having a big problem with someone else, and they were a moderator, and they were telling us about this problem, and then I think one of you must have worked out in the background that actually they were running two accounts and they were arguing with themselves. Is my recollection of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that they'd set this account up and made a couple of posts. There was hundreds and hundreds of posts in both accounts. So the time commitment, and that was a kind of an unusual. I'd never come across thinking, why have you got the time, the passion, and the energy to do that?
I think it's because there was wasn't there a star system or a rating system? The more posts you had, you had a different symbol or stuff. So I think a lot of people sort of fell into this. Oh well, he's a rookie. They've only done 10 posts. So right, I'm going to say 100 posts about nothing, just so I can get my post count up. Was that? I can't remember what it was, but there was something like that, wasn't there?
That's always an issue with forums. I mean, people want to get their numbers up and their stars up and their ratings up. Did we give them names? Those post count. I think we had the names that they were.
Yeah, we had club racers, home racer, novice, a few others. It sounded good, but as you say, Gareth, the way people are online, it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
That particular one, the guy, it started because we put him on a 5-day ban for swearing and misbehaving, and he didn't like it. So when we let him back on, it turned out eventually that he'd made a second account to try and make this person worse than him, so he could. And he was arguing with himself so that we would like him again. It was just ridiculous.
And back then we didn't have these tools to sort of track people's IP addresses and MAC addresses and things. I mean, now you can. I think a couple of years in we used to do IP address checks and things, and we've discovered that people had multiple accounts and things. Although not a crime in itself, but it just shows that a lot of people are actually nuts, right? So unfortunately, you put a group of people together in one space, and there is always going to be a percentage of them that are absolutely loony. And the problem is when you get multiple loony people in the same compact space together, you end up with a balmy. But this applies to
loonies, yeah.
this applies to anything.
It's a general online thing, right? It's because there's no filters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People just become. They do. I know it's horrible. It's just normal. But keyboard warriors, people just hide behind their keyboards.
Yeah.
And I think your point, Scott, is because most of them never used their real name. It didn't really matter, even if you met these people face to face, because you wouldn't know who on earth they were. And then when people did realise it, and they either promoted themselves or they started doing other things where their face got out there, you definitely saw a change in them. It's like, oh, well, people know who I am now. I'm going to dial it back a bit. I'm going to be a bit sensible.
Yes.
I think that the only thing I ever remember getting grief about, and maybe I've just got a bad memory, I think it was one of the reviews, and I can't remember which car it was. Anyway, I would have said something, not whatever I said, and I got what we now refer to as a pile-on about what an idiot I was.
I bet, let's be honest, I bet it was you reviewing Scalextric's car, and we're not going to say who it was, but basically somebody would come on and say, how dare you? How very dare you?
Yeah.
You can't say anything bad about Hornby. They are the best thing since sliced bread. Am I right?
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I mean,
Really?
I think I genuinely, I've got a bad memory. You'll have to gently hint or
okay. So it began with an M, and the second one was R. I'm not saying the whole thing. I'm crossing out the other letters. But basically, if you said anything bad about, it's not just me. I've not got a selective memory. Doug, Alan, back me up on this. Scott's obviously forgotten. No. He's too old.
Yeah, I posted the picture in the WhatsApp chat.
There we go.
Yeah. The thing is, though, I was saying this to Scott, that the guy actually was not that bad. He was all right. I met him years later, and he wasn't totally bananas, right? He was actually all right. But I think his online persona, the persona that he created, was just totally weird, right? And I think this is what you were saying about how people create this persona, which is just unreal.
Yeah. We better stop going there because Scott's already getting worried about his lack of lawyers.
Yeah, we don't have any lawyers. We've got a merch department. Don't worry. Your fee for this is I'll send you a sticker. They're very exclusive stickers, but actually, was there ever any Slot Forum merchandise? That's a quack.
Yes.
I had a pin badge.
There was. Do you remember we had this massive? One of the first. I mean, you would basically call it a Kickstarter nowadays, but we had this massive. How did we do it, Doug? We did it on a raffle. We had this massive raffle to raise funds for new servers because we were just it was just getting so busy. We had about like 400 or 500 prizes going out over 3 or 4 days worth of people joining in and just donating money. We had a minimum donation to try and raise these servers, and we were going to all the manufacturers. We're struggling. Can you send us this? And they went crazy. They sent us some incredible stuff.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah,
there's one thing. I mean, we made mugs, we made stickers. I think we made a banner. We made a banner somewhere. I think Alan might have got the banner at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to that actually.
Yeah,
yes.
Didn't we have quite a big banner somewhere?
Yeah, I do remember that because it came along to a number of events that we did.
Okay, Gareth got it right.
No, I have not got it.
Somebody in the UK has it for sure. It might even be
the one thing we made, which was pretty good, was SCX did a lime green CUDA, and it had slot forum written on the windscreen of that. And we had 500 made.
No,
Was it
not
500 or was it 50?
50.
Was it 50?
50.
Ah,
Yeah.
and we gave one each to who? It was 50 what?
Well, if you remember, we had a slot forum event. So
we did.
And it was
I'd
everyone
done
who came to that event or what?
Yeah, they all got one.
Everyone
and
who came
they are very rare, actually.
Yeah, they're going for over 300 euros on eBay. That's for sure. Right.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
Do they?
Yeah, there we go. I haven't got mine anymore.
So those couple that are rusted in my shed, I should probably go and get them.
Probably should. Now, I know Scott's got one still, because that came up the other day, didn't it, Scott?
I have got one, yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was saying my recollection of that was the event in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Which I think from memory was 2011.
Was it something like the 5th anniversary or something like that? Or I can't remember.
Maybe even the 10th anniversary.
Right.
I don't know. But so, and we got given. I'm sure we got. There was a bag which I think was an SCX branded plastic bag. We had the green CUDA. I think there was a lanyard. There was something I never really recognised. It was branded.
It was like an ashtray.
It was like an ashtray.
It was. Do you know
Really?
what? Yeah, it was. It was an
do you know what
ashtray.
I think it is? Do you know what I think it is? It was a coin exchange. For in a shop, you put your change in that, and then the shopkeeper would put your change and pick it up.
But it did make quite a good ashtray as well.
But until earlier this year, I still had everything in the polythene bag. I hadn't taken it; just gone into the corner of the slot room, and it was all still in there.
Yeah.
And it was only when they launched earlier this year, maybe last year, when they launched what looked like new CUDAs, but it's the same CUDA, but a different motor chassis. And there was the green, and I thought, and there was this. They say, "Well, it's a new." I thought, I'm sure I've got one that color, and sure enough, I have. Yeah, that was that's probably the biggest thing, and that and the banner, obviously. I mean, that event in Birmingham, I was right at the end. I think that was when I kind of, not because of it, it sounds like a cause and effect, but I was kind of giving up slot cars for the period at that time. But before that, we had, I think it was a first anniversary thing where we all came out to Switzerland.
You did?
That was the first birthday party, wasn't it? And
it was, yeah.
So I mean, well, why did we come to Switzerland? Tell everyone.
So I had a club with a couple of friends at the time in a very large room that we were lucky to get. We had 6 different tracks with all different styles. We had a rally track. We had Mugello, which was had the full lighting for night racing, for fog racing. We had Thomas's Suzuka. Do you remember?
Yeah,
that was that 132 scale version of Suzuka on Carrera. That was a full line. That was superb. I seem to remember the regulations and the rules were a little strict, being so Germanic as he was. And we had what did we have? We had a SpongeBob track for the kids. We had 3 or 4 different tracks. So it was just a big event that we hosted to say hi and thank.
When you say big event, I mean I think it was 3 or 4 of us went over. I know Gareth, Jim, and I. Was there 3 or 4 of us?
Yeah, there was another chap as well that was from like the Farnham area. That again, I can't remember his name, but he hasn't been into slot cars possibly since. Again, hopefully it wasn't that, but he came out with it random.
But as I remember, because you're downplay. It was this modern big room. You had a kitchen stroke bar area.
Yeah.
And as I remember it, basically we went in there on Friday night and pretty much didn't leave. And pizza was delivered, and we were racing and just running. And in fact, one of my fondest slot memories ever was Doug and I, with the then new Maserati and van wall. I think with the magnets out, there was a Scalextric sport track that you had, which was...
That was Mugello, copy of Mugello.
Landscaped and everything.
Yeah.
And Doug and I just spent, I don't know how long, but in my memory it was, an extended period of time, just lapping these 2 cars, not really racing, just kind of sliding beside each other.
We were such rubbish racers, we just did the lapping thing.
But it was, so it was basically a slot car lock-in. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
and,
it was good. I do remember the night racing. That was really good. And like you say, Alan, it was fog as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, I put a fog machine underneath. And
yeah, I remember.
Alan's got Alan's got the photograph there on that mouse pad that he's got there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can actually, I'm not sure if it will show.
The guy who took that photograph was the other chap that I was talking about. So the guy who came
Yeah.
over from the UK, he was a bit of a photography whiz, and he was doing all these long
He was.
exposures, wasn't he? And you get all these
Yeah.
tail lights and all that kind of stuff. They were great.
That's
Yeah,
lovely stuff.
It's a full on. Yeah, that was good fun.
I don't have those pictures actually.
They
Oh,
must
I
have,
do.
I mean, how far now can you go back on the slot forum and actually see original posts?
Don't know.
Oh,
Well,
no
my
idea.
old stuff isn't there anymore,
Right,
so I don't
okay.
know. No.
They migrated to a new one and dumped everything, I think.
Oh, did they? Okay.
But the thing is that there used to be this massive section of reviews and then gallery photos and stuff like that, and that all seems to have gone. I looked in there the other day when you mentioned this podcast thing, but actually I think all the real good content seems to have gone.
Oh, that's a
But-
shame.
Yeah.
But post counts seem to be maintained for some weird reason. I haven't been there for years, over a decade. But I'm still the 8th highest poster according to their stats, which is like, what?
An accolade, that one.
Alan, you're next on the list. I think you're 9th or
Must
10th
be,
or
yeah.
something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we.
I mean, not to. I mean, I was again conscious of time, and obviously it came. Eventually, you sold the site on, and it went to other people to do other things with. I don't want to dwell on that because that was, these things run their course or whatever. But what was was it because collectively you guys had got fed up doing it, or it just became boring, wanted to sell it on?
I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why Doug. So for me, family time and free time changed, and there was less and less time on the forum. And forums, the same as a lot of like Discord channels and stuff now, they have an optimum level above which they're uncontrollable and not so friendly anymore. And I think for me, the family atmosphere that we had in the first few years just died off. And suddenly you would go on there and it was full of chats by people you had no idea who they were. And then I was there less and less. And I know for Doug, still being the main admin, the workload got higher and higher and there was no support. So,
well, I mean, there was a lot of work for it, and there wasn't really a lot of income. It was literally like a 24-hour job where you had to be there day in and night in and fix all the technical issues, but you were not getting really a salary out of it. You were getting a percentage of ad revenue, and I think at the end it was just sort of lack of time, lack of money, lack of motivation to sort of really keep it going.
It got too big to be a hobby anymore. And so the forum itself, I mean, and so.
Yeah, which is fair enough. But it's I mean, obviously I've touched on the fact that my kind of slot journey, if I could use that dreadful expression, was to be kind of interested in it, and I think the forum played a big part in introducing me to other people and clubs and taking that on. And I stopped for a while and then sort of come back. And now it's practically what I do full time, to be honest. Because that's retirement is great. You get to play with your toy cars. But I don't know, Gareth, with separate podcasts coming up with that, he sold his collection, 4, 5, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Doug and Alan, are you still? Where are you on slot? What was you after that? What happened?
So I know both. Well, I had the club, which was good, and there was a big community in Germany that I got involved with for a while. I know Doug was feeling a bit isolated club-wise, or even people to use the cars with. For me, I have to admit that the collecting was getting a bit out of hand. It was a bit addictive. When your disposable income is gone and you're dipping into family funds, which I was for a while, then it starts getting a bit silly. So I had to grow up and calm down a bit. And then you, by nature, then you fall out of the loop slightly. But no, I still have most of them. They're just sitting in boxes.
And you don't use them? You don't have a club anymore. You don't go racing anymore.
We sold the wooden track. I took Mugello down, which was probably the worst thing I ever did. That was a really bad move, getting rid of Mugello. And now I have an old barn with the intention of putting some tracks back up. I still have an inordinate amount of kitty, which is the Swiss stuff, some American tracks, and a couple of other variations. I'll put them up again sometime, but it's at the moment there's different priorities.
Doug?
Well, I mean, like Alan, everything is sitting in boxes, really. I haven't sold anything because I just never got around to selling it. If you do set up a barn, Alan, I can give you that one track that came my way, that very, very first digital track. Remember that kind of
You still got
intelligent
that?
digital thing?
Wow.
You know that wooden thing? It's sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. What was it called? Ideal Slot Race? No, it was the automatic lane changing. Which,
actually it's pretty good. It really is
yeah.
pretty nifty. You know, you can have a lot of fun on it.
Was it Perfect
But,
Line or something,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
It was. Yeah.
yeah,
Automatic lane changing,
Yeah.
and the cars
something like
registered
that.
when they were too close. They stayed on a different line. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
No,
Yeah.
I'll talk to you about that, Doug. That would be excellent. Yeah.
Bizarrely
I'll have to
enough,
show you.
actually, thinking
Yeah.
about it, the beginning of the end was probably digital.
Yes.
If I'm honest, from kind of my side of it, a lot of, maybe from the forum side a little bit, but actually the whole digital thing, it just, well, it didn't really do it for me at all. And there was a lot of manufacturer push to promote digital, to talk about digital. There were lots of different systems. It's your classic, Hoover versus Dyson type thing, and VHS versus whatever the other one was.
Betamax.
Betamax, there we go. So there was a lot of that going backwards and forwards, and it was all quite interesting if you had one or the other. But you were just, again, people were just slagging off the other one because that's not the one they had. I don't know. It went downhill a bit after that. So I'm not into it now. So I've only ever raced on a digital track, either at NSCC events, big slot swap meets. And that's it. I've never been to a track that's had digital, and I think that was kind of like a bit of a killer for it, actually.
Yeah. So I think for the last couple of years, where I was truly active, I did a lot of club racing 24-hour events around Europe, Spain, Germany, Italy especially, with that 24 lane tracks, which were just basically 8-lane tracks mirrored. And they were 36 lanes, some of them. And there was one in Germany. I can't remember the name of the system now. That was a 24-hour race on digital. That killed me. That was the toughest event I ever did. Because not only are you trying to keep track of your car, which at night with nights is hard enough, you then have to work out what lane you're going in. And if you deslot, you're put on the outside lane and you have to drive around and it destroyed 24-hour racing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you know, they have in the UK, they have a 24-hour digital race on a 2-lane track. So it's basically a sports hall, shape of Le Mans, even got a Ferris wheel in a pit lane. And I think they have, I'll get this wrong, I think they have 18 cars, 16 cars, something like that. And
on 2 lanes?
And on 2 lanes, on digital, yeah. Most of it's 2-lane. I believe most of it's 2-lane.
Wow.
Around the pits and everything is obviously a bit more multi-lane. And even when they start, there's a pace car leads the field round, and it pulls up the pit lane and they kick off. Yeah.
All due respect to them, but when you've raced on 36 lanes over 24 hours, standard analog, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There we go.
Well, I think it's a great device. Now that I've started, Gareth coined the phrase of the slot gypsies because we used to visit different clubs and indeed countries, and I'm kind of holding up that tradition in my own little way. So down in Worthing, they have a digital. In fact, they've just had a digital Goodwood weekend, and they have some digital endurance races and stuff. So I'm going to the club will lend me a controller and a car, so I'm going to go and try that for an evening. I'll be rubbish, but I just want to try it. Anyway, guys, listen, I think that's been really useful. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hopefully, people have enjoyed listening. I don't think we've broken any laws, so I don't need to alert the Talking Utter Slot legal department. Not yet, anyway. I'll say thank you and goodbye to everybody's listening. Thank you and goodbye to you guys. And don't hang up, but I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
I really do need to plan the end of programs better, don't I? Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed listening to us reminiscing like that. It was certainly good fun to see the guys and catch up again. All the regular Talking Utter Slot programs are available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and I hope you enjoy listening to them.